Yes, thank you, Irina. And Krupa, thank you for your time today and for sharing your expertise and your knowledge. Let's just start by telling everyone a little bit about your background. And what products you formulate. You're a formulator. I've spoken to you about several subjects and topics, and you have a background in biology. So why don't you share a little bit with the audience so we can just tune into that.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep it short. But yes, I do have a biology background. So I have my master's and my undergrad in biology, and I wanted to be a genetic engineer. So I have a good biotechnology background. Cosmetics isn't really what I would used to consider as a career option, but then I landed an internship at Estee Lauder, and my career took off from there. So I have been in the cosmetic sector for about 12 years now, and for most of that time, I have been focusing in on natural and organic products. I've spent a lot of time formulating to standards, certification, different kinds of certification standards, and know green beauty very intimately, even before clean beauty existed. So yeah, I've been in the space. I formulate different kinds of products. I do a lot of skincare, hair care, baby care, body care, sun care, and lots of other stuff. I do a little bit of makeup, but not as much.
Great. That was my second question. So you already answered it. So we're being super efficient with our time today. What kinds of products do you formulate? What do you actually formulate? So when you're formulating, so let's go through these categories of ingredients and break it down a little bit. I don't know what everybody's knowledge is about these ingredients, but silicones, acrylates, petroleum-based ingredients, and then you wanted to talk about polyquaternium compounds today. So if you can just kind of go through those a little bit slowly, one by one, what are the concerns with them for the environment? What are the concerns with them? How can they harm the environment? You and I, we've spoken quite a bit about it. And introducing them to our environment through our products, going, with everything gets washed down the drain at some point. And what is the potential for, what happens to those ingredients when they do go down the drain?
Yeah, so that is a big question. So I'll answer. I'll first talk about silicones, right? Silicones have been around for a while. And they are man-made ingredients that are not found in nature, and they bioaccumulate. They are not biodegradable, so they are persistent in the environment. Most of the silicones, linear silicones, end up in sewage sludge or get removed by the water treatment plants. However, some of the cyclic silicones, when they end up in the water, are very toxic to fish and crustaceans, and definitely concerning. Even more than that, because they are bioaccumulative, that you are going to get exposed to these at some point, right? Because of the marine life, because of the water sources. And what's concerning is some of the cyclic species, or some of the cyclic silicones, like cyclomethicone or D4, are have been proven in several studies that they are neurotoxic, and they also cause reproductive toxicity. There's also one study that EPA has talked about a lot, and this study talks about how linear silicones like dimethicone convert into cyclic silicones that are more concerning in neutral soil. They go through hydrolysis and may convert into something that is more harmful than a linear silicone. So definitely, I have not formulated with silicones. I don't want to formulate with silicones. I hope I can keep away from silicones for the rest of my career. And silicones are usually used in cosmetics for film forming abilities, or their feel on the skin, for their unique properties. And all of these properties can be achieved now using several gums or several silicone alternatives. There's a lot of raw material suppliers like Inalex that have come up with silicone alternatives that are really good and environmentally friendly and more biodegradable than silicones. And I don't think that there's enough reason now to keep using silicones in our products.
But they're very prevalent if you go. They're still extremely prevalent in when you look at ingredient lists.
Yes, they're very prevalent, and I know that there's people who talk about how silicones are harmless, and to some degree they are right. Some silicones, like linear silicones, are harmless because they have not been proven unsafe. So apparently they're harmless, but at the same time they've not been proven safe either. So I think there's this balancing act there, but I think that there just needs to be a little bit more research when it comes to how safe they are environmentally.
Great. And I'm just gonna, I think one of the, why this topic interests me. About 4 years ago, Beauty Heroes decided to actually stop carrying products with silicones and acrylates and petroleum-based ingredients. And I'm sidetracking just for a moment because I think our rationale was, right, we don't know what effect this has, going into our water, going into the soil, into out in the world. And as a biologist, I think that's kind of like the thought process, right? If we don't know what happens when these ingredients are introduced into the environment, it seems like, we don't want to be drinking silicones or watering our plants with silicones, probably. Maybe we don't have definitive studies saying that it's going to hurt anybody, but it's probably a better scenario to hold back on that. As a biologist, I think that's sort of like the common sense approach that we took, understanding that these are bioaccumulative and not really knowing for sure that there are studies that they are harmful, but we thought, we don't really need them. Maybe we should make a decision not to pull back on introducing them into the environment.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have adopted that philosophy while formulating, that if there's not enough evidence that something is safe for use, the burden of proof lies with proving the safety of the ingredient first, and going the prevention route when it comes to scientific uncertainty. So I think that is the same case with like silicones, or even something like chemical sunscreens, which are, I know we're going to talk about petroleum derived ingredients later, but same thing. We don't know, even after, the FDA came out recently with calling them marketed unapproved drugs, right? And they're classifying them as marketed unapproved drugs. And after 60 years of use, they are saying that there's not enough evidence that they are safe. But they're not saying that they are not safe. They're just not safe. They're not like banning them. They are approved for use, yet they are not safe. So I think that it's just, we've like overall.
Very confusing for consumers. I think
it's confusing. Exactly.
And yeah.
100% confusing for consumers, especially when they don't understand some of the scientific rationale behind like approving or not approving an ingredient. Like, a normal consumer would think if something is approved by the FDA, it's fine to use. Yet 60 years into it, we're saying, well, hold on, we're not sure. So, yes, confusing.
Okay, let's go to, so we talked a little bit about silicones, acrylates. Do you want to talk about those?
Yeah, there's acrylates are very much, I put them in the same category as silicones. There's not enough data there as well. But with acrylates, the reason why there's not enough data is because of their size. So acrylates have a bigger molecular size. So because of this bigger molecular size, they've always been almost kind of they've gotten away without any without registration in the EU. Like REACH doesn't worry about acrylates. Yet there are certain kinds of acrylates like methacrylates and ethyl acrylate that have shown time and time again shown a lot of studies around their health effects. Right, they are classified as carcinogens, some of them, with the EPA and the IARC. And so I just think that we've not studied acrylates enough to say. There's also not enough studies with regards to their environmental toxicity. Yet they are not as biodegradable because of their molecular size. And so we just need more studies. We just need more research to understand the potential harm or the safety of these ingredients.
Great. And then the big class of petroleum-based ingredients. Can you quickly sort of try to orient all of us on this large category and some of the issues?
Yeah. So definitely, like, petroleum-based ingredients is really big category, right? And even though something might not be petroleum derived, petroleum might be used in the production of it. And that in itself is not sustainable, right? Petroleum is non-renewable source and it's not sustainable. There are certain classes of ingredients that I did want to address, like chemical sunscreens, for example, or polyquats, like quaternium 15, that have been proven to be toxic to aquatic life, crustaceans and mollusks, and there's so many studies that have been done around these. Yet companies keep using these ingredients as preservatives, or as mostly as preservatives. There's enough preservatives available nowadays that we don't need these ingredients. So I really hope that, with retailers like yourself and, Credo and some of these really, industry changing retailers pushing people to go towards preservatives that are not formaldehyde releasers, or preservatives that are not necessarily, they are just not relevant anymore, especially looking at the studies that talk about endocrine disruption and like the human health effect at the same time, aquatic life disruption. So definitely want to talk about them. And yeah, I can go on, but
Yeah. Are there any ingredients that maybe are sneaky, like you might not know? It doesn't sound like a petroleum-based ingredient, or it doesn't sound like something that could be, harmful, but maybe is. Like, it's kind of this ingredient that not everybody knows what it is or how it's derived or how it's processed.
Let's see. Ethyl alcohol. I think not many people know that it's actually petroleum derived. And then urea is a big one. Urea is a petroleum derived ingredient, and it has so many studies around aquatic toxicity, which not many people know of.
Is there another name on an INCI list for urea? Because I haven't seen that on an ingredient list.
I think the brands that you carry probably don't have that, but the bigger brands.
I'm looking at we have a lot of brands pitching us. So we're looking at ingredient lists all day, because there's brands that are sending in to Beauty Heroes. And I've never, so I'm looking at ingredient lists, and, I scan them really, that's the first thing that we look at, because we can't have a conversation with a brand if it's got an ingredient that we don't support at Beauty Heroes. So we have to kind of look at it and say, okay, are we even interested in this brand? We have to look at the ingredient list first. And so I'm looking at a lot of ingredient lists, and urea is I've never seen that on an ingredient list. So does it have a different name on an INCI list?
It could. It has diisonyl urea, or urea itself, but those are two different ingredients, but both are concerning. And there's also ingredients like isododecane that is like very prevalent in lip products and in hair care products that are also petroleum derived. So something to look at. What else? Phenoxyethanol is a big one, but I know that you guys already scanned for that, so that's great.
Beauty Hero does. Beauty Heroes does scan for it. So that's a petroleum derived ingredient.
Yes, and it's an ethoxylated ingredient too.
Right.
So there's, and there's also studies for aquatic toxicity on that, really well received studies too, that are, and I think I told you, Jeannie, I shared about the Palau banning phenoxyethanol from their list, along with some of the organic sunscreens too, because of that, because of their, aquatic toxicity studies.
Yeah. Great. So the question is, if these ingredients are harmful to the environment and we are starting to get more awareness around this, why are companies continuing to formulate with them? And, the answer kind of that I always give is because they're easily accessible. They're effective at what they do, right? They're actually really good at what they do in a formula, many of them, and they're inexpensive. They're less expensive. Like, you actually probably, when you're putting together a formula, you really look not only, you're trying to make the formula work right and accomplish its job, but you also have to consider the cost of the ingredients and how that's going to affect the final cost of the product. So can you maybe share a little bit of that? You work for say Lauder and and probably have worked with many clients, big and small, and so I'd love to just hear about that from you.
Yeah, definitely. So you were 100% right. Cost is a major factor when developing products, because you can't replace silicone with something that costs 4 times as much as silicone. It's that's
Why can't you?
I
I just feel like our brands do that all the time, right? They're formulating products that are so much more expensive.
Exactly, but I think that brands, it also comes back to the consumer. How much is a consumer ready to pay? How much premium are they ready to pay for a product that is cleaner? I have not heard of a $60 conditioner or a $90 shampoo that consumers have received well. So definitely, like, there's, you have to be, as a brand and as a product formulator, you have to formulate products that are clean, but at the same time, you have to make sure that they're accessible. So that has always been a challenge. Things are much better now than they were 10 years ago. When I first started in the industry, there was hardly, like, maybe, I want to say, like 50 chemicals or 50 like surfactants, 50 alternatives that we could go to replace some of these ingredients. Now there's a slew of them. There's so many of them, and thanks to retailers like yourself, like you guys have pushed the industry. Consumers have asked so many questions from brand owners that there has been demand to put money into researching better ingredients. And so I've seen it happen. There's so many alternatives now compared to before, and not always cost prohibitive, but definitely the non the silicones and the acrylates and the cloths are much more accessible than the other versions, than the sustainable versions. So we hope that changes.
Are you seeing that clients coming to you for formulas, clients from all different sort of, I guess, visions for their brand or for their product, are more interested in products that are environmentally sensitive? And I think, kind of the ultimate hope for this conversation for me is that, and for all of these Blue Beauty conversations, is really that people are inspired to do the right thing, because they actually care as humans, right? Like, you're starting a brand, you have a vision for a brand, you want to bring something really cool to the world. And you come and you say, hey, I want to make sure my products are really environmentally safe because I don't want to put something in the world that isn't. Are you seeing that kind of interest, or are you seeing something that's slightly different? Like, I want to be able to market my product as sort of an environmentally friendly product, and I want to, meet this standard so that I can be in this store. And, like, that's very different. I think from my perspective, I feel like most of the brands we work with, like, they would never even consider working, like, putting a product out there that wasn't environmentally conscious, or, didn't consider the environment from so many different aspects, not just like toxicity. Like, that, the thought of toxicity wouldn't even, enter their atmosphere. But they're thinking more a little bit about sourcing, and can I source this sustainably? Can I pay people, a fair wage? Can we source this for the long term? And how can we do this in a way that's maybe even regenerative? Like, that's kind of the way that a lot of the brands that I'm working with are thinking about ingredients, kind of like beyond, like, not putting ingredients that are harmful to the environment is a really low bar for a lot of the brands that I work with. And I work with some incredible founders and formulators, true green beauty pioneers. But for more mainstream, formulations, are people caring about this genuinely, and how are they coming to you?
I have been very lucky that most of the brands, all of the brands actually that come to me to formulate a product, know that I do clean beauty. I don't do anything else. So they know what to expect from me. They are willing to put in the time and the effort it takes to do it right. So most of the brands that I work with do care. They do ask those questions. If they don't, I push them to, and that does happen, right? But at the same time, I think what happens, all brand owners want to do right. They want a product that is the best product ever. They want an innovative product, and at the same time, they want to do what's right for the environment and for the health of their consumers. The problem, I think, happens when they don't know what questions to ask, and they don't know what to look for. Like, they talk about, let's say, biodegradability, but then they don't understand what that means. What are you looking for biodegradability, especially when in this environment when we don't even know, right? There's no standards. The FDA has not determined a standard method to determine biodegradability of an ingredient. That we don't know what, if somebody says this is biodegradable, what does that even mean? Does it take months to biodegrade? Does it take special environmental conditions to biodegrade? None of those things have been defined. So I think the issue comes up when people don't know what questions to ask. But otherwise, I think that for sure, all the brands that I work with are very concerned with putting out the best ingredient, best for themselves, best for the health of their consumers and the environment as well.
Yeah. So if somebody is, if we have somebody who's wanting to develop a brand and they're going to a formulator or a lab, or they're working with somebody right now, maybe they're in the process of working with somebody, what are the questions that they should be asking them?
What are the questions? So what are the questions for developing a environmentally friendly product?
Yeah, like what are like a few questions that they can ask? I think that's one of the things, like I actually have the easy job, right? In these conversations, I just ask the questions of people who know so much more than me. And I feel like that's been my really what I do at Beauty Heroes is I just ask questions and then I get an answer and then I formulate like a response. Like, do I want to carry, have this product or have this ingredient at Beauty Heroes? Well, let me ask some questions of some really smart people, get some information, and then, decide what feels right to me. And so much of this is just really asking the right questions. And I feel like that's very true. They don't know what questions to ask. So, I think giving a few tools for people to say, hey, I never even thought of asking a lab this specific question, and seeing what they said. And one of the things that's interesting to me when we're vetting brands is sometimes we ask questions and oftentimes, not super often, but it happens with some regularity, they don't know the answer about their own brand. And some of them are not that hard. The questions aren't that hard. And second, sometimes they'll just not answer because they don't have an answer that they want to provide. And that's good information. You don't want to answer the question. So that works as well. That has worked really well for us. If we ask the question and somebody doesn't answer it, then we can just move on. But what are a few questions you can ask a lab if you're going and you want to like make sure that your brand is really environmentally sensitive? Although we went through a lot of good things in this conversation so far that hopefully are empowering people to be able to ask some questions. But
Yeah,
great.
I mean, I really wish that like one of these days I could come up with a list of questions to like share with the world that these are the things that you need to do. But really it depends on it. There are so many nuances that go into the manufacturing of a raw material or manufacturing of a product that I think it's a lot of brunt on brand owners to, learn all of that along with entrepreneurship, I think. But one of the easy things to do whenever you are questioning something is see if a product or not a product, as a raw material is third party certified. So I did this post recently with Lisa on like deciphering different certifications. It's a fantastic resource for formulators and brand owners so they can understand what they are. And I talk about processes and I talk about all of that. So it is very important. Like, let's say if I don't know if an X ingredient is good or not, or you can always tell the lab to use an ingredient that is approved by a third party, like Cosmos or like NSF, or, so that will tell you that those third parties have already vetted the ingredient. They've gone through everything to know that the process doesn't involve any petrochemicals. There's no questionable input ingredients in there, and that they are sustainable ingredients that you are able to use. So that is like first step. But there are so many other nuances, Jeannie, that like not necessarily, it depends on like surfactants. I would look at different things versus, if it's oils, I would look at different things versus if it's an extract, I would look at different things. So yeah, not, I guess, I don't know. I hope that's helpful to start.
Yeah. And I would say brands could hire you to support them through that process, but I know that you're busy and you have a really long waiting list. So that might not be possible for to have you support them through working with a lab. But that, if you were available, if you did have time in your client list, you could work with brands to help support them in these conversations.
100%. And you don't have to hire me to ask me a question, is what I'm going to say. Just ask me a question. I'm happy to answer. And there's also a lot of other people like me. There's a lot of other resources that I can also point you to. But yes, don't rely on your labs if you're not 100% sure, if you're getting a feeling that you're not getting the support. There are other resources but don't give up on you know on getting the best product and the most sustainable product, and that is right for
Yeah,
your
I
business.
would say that's probably really good advice is if you're working with a lab, have somebody independent also with you to work with the lab. The lab might be great and maybe telling you everything that you need to know, but it's nice to have somebody else who's independent from the lab to just sort of verify and maybe, because you're investing so much. I have seen it where you're investing, brands have invested so much into their brand, and they found out later that something that the lab told them maybe wasn't totally complete, or they didn't know the right questions to ask. And they wish they had, and now the formula's done and the product's out in the market, and they now are thinking about reformulating because there's an aspect of it that they want to change. And if they had only known early on. Speaking of questions, we've got a couple from the audience that we should just take really quickly. What are the top ingredient categories where we need more alternatives now? You said there's more alternatives than there were 10 years ago, but where can we see some more innovation?
Polyquats are definitely one of the things that we need more innovation. And when I say polyquats, I'm not talking about like quaternium 15 or anything like any of the preservatives, but cationic polymers are extremely hard to replace. I feel for hair care brands who develop conditioners and who want their conditioners to work without quats, it's really hard to do. And definitely, I really hope that, and I've told my suppliers this too, like if you come up with a polymer that is cationic, I'll buy tons of it. Like it is, very, very hard to formulate a good conditioner that will give your hair the positive charge you need without the quaternary ammonium salts. So that one for sure.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I agree. Like conditioners are,
They are hard. Yeah.
very hard. Yeah. What is your position? This is a little more of a technical question. What is your position on the GMMS, like the glycols or the GMMs, like the glycols and squalanes that are made from plants and genetically modified yeasts and enzymes? I get it now. Like science talk,
Yes. Yes, this is a very fun topic, and we could have a webinar about this someday. But I actually like them. I think they are great, mostly because if you think about it, if you think about all the investment and sustainability around resources that are saved, the labor, the agricultural resources that are almost like palm trees are destroyed in making some of these ingredients versus when they are made from yeasts or synthetic lab cultivated. They are so much more sustainable, so I am for them. I do not see any issues with using those ingredients.
Great, thank you for the question, and thank you for the answer, Krupa.
Yeah.
Is there anything? Sorry. Was there anything else that you wanted to share on this topic before we wrap up today? It was really informative. I like to have these conversations be short and give you some good information, as much good information in as short a time as possible. But was there anything else that we didn't cover on formulating with environmentally friendly, smart ingredients that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
Not really. I think we covered a lot today, which I'm glad. Thank you, Jeannie. It was great. But no, I don't think we've covered enough, I think. But I will say, if you're a brand owner and you have a question, you're working with a lab, or you're in a tough spot, feel free to email me to reach out. It's totally fine. And I won't charge you anything to answer a simple question. So but please make sure you make the right choices, especially with some questionable raw material categories that don't have to go in your products.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Krupa, for this conversation. You've been a great resource for me. I'm so grateful to have to know you and to be able to sometimes run a questionable ingredient by you or a product. So this is I'm thrilled to be able to introduce you to this community and to have this conversation with you. So